All right, guys, it's Jahlon, and I know, I get it. You hate the classroom, you hate the chalkboard. Unfortunately, there's no footage I can show you for this discussion on action and tab hybrid. I talk about this on my stream all the time. I wanted to put together a reference video I can send people to. The truth of the matter is, Intrepid Studios is tackling one of the largest problems in MMORPG gaming. Action is seemingly growing in popularity, but the old guard still wants tab. So how do you take action and tab and put them together and make a hybrid? The problem here is when you think about what a hybrid is, you have to remember you're taking one thing action, you're taking another thing tab, and you're trying to come up with some blend, some hybrid, some mathematical average. In a perfect world, we would get to 0. We would say our hybrid is 0. It's -10 and 10 put together. I don't really believe people would be happy with that. I don't think tab players would like it. I don't think action players would like it. The reason why is I don't think it would look like this, nice, neat, white, this right font. I think it would come busting in the door like the Kool-Aid man and say, ta-da, I'm here. And everybody would say, what is that? The reason why is action and tab are fundamentally different on the combat flow, starting with accuracy. In tab combat, the flow works like this. You have an aggressor, you have a defender, and that aggressor has an accuracy rating. In this case, 95%. So in a mathematically perfect world, out of 100 shots, I would have 95 not misses, and I would have 5 misses. Now, why don't I say hits? Why are these not misses? Why not just call them hits? The reason I don't call them hits is because the defender has done nothing. The defender has literally stood still, and yet they will still be missed 5% of the time. There is a second part of tab combat that looks at evasion rolls, avoidance rolls. We'll talk about those in a second. To stay with just accuracy, in action combat, there is also a combat flow. That involves player skill. The player wants to attack. They have to line up their crosshairs and hit the mouse button or the number key in order to activate the ability. If the defender stands still, it does not guarantee a hit. It certainly makes it more likely to hit, but you can still miss against the target that's standing still. And add into action, if the defender is moving, that adds in complications to lining up your crosshairs. So with just these two things in mind, you're going to have, out of 100 shots, 100 can be hits, 100 can be misses, or you can have any combination in between. So people say on the Discord all the time, why can't you just jam these two systems together? Well, starting out, what we've just presented is there's already favoritism to tab combat. It will be easier for a tab aggressor to fight an action aggressor because the tab aggressor doesn't have to worry about lining up crosshairs and can focus on movement. And movement causes action players, action aggressors, to have a lower accuracy. But what we have right now, just starting off, we have our starting points. We're just going to jam them together, right? So we're going to keep everything in tab. We're going to keep everything in action and jam them together. And then immediately the action players say, just add more damage to the action skills because that will compensate for the variable accuracy. And I have to ask, is that the right solution? And the answer is no, because we're problem solving before we actually know the problem, because we haven't even taken into account waterfall stats on the tab side. So we don't know that tab accuracy is going to be better. So let's do that real quick. Let's take off the beginning combat flow. We've already determined how many not misses we have. And remember, the defender doesn't have to contest the 5 misses. The defender is going to only contest these 95 not misses with their evasion rate of 30.5%, which means 29 times they will evade. 66 times they will not evade. The attacker now hits 66 times out of 100. Now, I think 66 times out of 100 is a low enough accuracy that we don't have to automatically assume action skills need more damage. When we go further into the waterfall stats of tab, the armored character could be using a shield. They could still have a block rating. This would further reduce either the number of hits if blocks stop hits from coming through, or it could reduce the damage on hits if that's how you set up your block rating to function. The problem with compromise is that each side wants what they want, and the more you move away from a purist action or a purist tab, the more players you're going to lose. So the compromise has to be reaching into a pool of players that it appeals to and compensates for your losses. So when you take your starting points and you start talking about waterfall and accuracy and movement, I think you've moved really close to 0 on action. I think you're only at about a 4 on tab. And I don't think anybody really likes what we're seeing here. If we talk about waterfall stats, tab stats versus action, we've already looked at the accuracy for both types. We've looked at dodge for tab. But how is waterfall going to play into action? So you've got your attacker must still align the crosshairs. That's the player skill. The defender can still move around, but now all of a sudden the defender is going to get an evasion roll against every successful hit. This is going to lower action's accuracy a lot because now they're fighting. I can hit, I can miss. You can still dodge physically or dodge with dice. So I think if you do that, you keep the tab players happy, but you really don't do much to make your action players happy. Action players aren't going to want to face evasion rolls. So then we say, what if there was no waterfall evasion? What if dodging was all active with iframe rolls? Well, Guild Wars 2 does this, and I would say that makes your action camera, action players a little bit happier. But I think you're really starting to reach a dangerous threshold for your tab players because tab players want waterfall stats. I talked about the problem of who is the target audience several months ago. This video is in the upper right-hand corner. I think Intrepid is very close to treading into WildStar territory where they're trying to make everybody happy, so they're going to end up making nobody happy. I know Steven is working on combat with the team. They did talk about design. They did talk about prototyping. So I think this is foremost in their mind. But a big problem is I don't think the community knows what they want. So they have no idea where to align the markers and what mathematical answer to come up to the hybrid problem. What do the players want? And this isn't me advancing my agenda. This is me advancing what I've listened to players say over thousands of hours streaming and of videos and comments. I think everybody, action and tab, wants good combat. I think the tab players want the smoothness of WoW and Arcage without the terrain nonsense. I think terrain should block projectiles. Once I move behind terrain, and even if the spell is in the air, it should have a blocking effect if I move behind a hill or a building. Intrepid Studios has already talked about spell collision. I also think that terrain should block or cancel tab target lock. I am outside of your line of sight. If I am obstructed in line of sight, I shouldn't be able to have you tab target locked. You shouldn't be able to have me tab target locked. And I think all the action players would say yes. That's if we're going to cut things out of tab, cut that. So I don't think anybody's unhappy if we do that one. I also think everyone's going to agree there should be no animation canceling. Now, animation canceling is not action canceling. What I'm talking about here is for tab players, you know that there's a sweet spot where the spell will still go off, but you've ended the animation early. So healers call this heal sliding. Mages, you know that if it's a 5-second cast, you get accustomed to knowing at 4.3 seconds you can move. For my action players, my first-person shooter players, you know this is the reload trick where you haven't gone through the whole reload animation, but you can start firing with a full magazine. I don't think anybody wants animation canceling, so we want Intrepid to make sure they get that smooth. I think we also have no 2.5 second global cooldown. I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy. I don't think anybody likes a 2.5 second global cooldown. I think everybody wants a global cooldown, even if they don't realize they want it. They don't want 19 abilities to go off at one time. I think everybody wants off global cooldown abilities, interjects. If you have a 1 second global cooldown, you want to be able to do like 2 abilities going off at the same time. Some of these are defensive stats, some of these are evasion, some of these are movement. I don't think mitigation stats or movement should ever be tied to the global cooldown. With those in mind, I think everybody wants a healthy variety of single target, multi-target, and AoE. Now, there is a difference between multi-target and AoE. Single target, you hit one person on a tab lock. Multi-target, you hit one person and it spreads. This is either a chain heal, where I know the first person that's going to get the heal, and the heal spreads out randomly, either by who needs it the most or purely randomly. Same thing with like a chain lightning. I know who's going to get the initial hit of the chain lightning, and then the remaining people are random. And then area of effect. I think everybody can agree frontal cones, directional, whichever way I'm facing, the cone goes that way. So no looking this way, having a tab target this way, and when I hit the cone, I shift and pivot on my hip and throw the cone that way. Cones should be directional. I think off-center AoEs are fine, both in heals and damage. Those are off-center of the caster. I think ground reticles are amazing, especially in a game like Ashes of Creation, where they plan on having player collision. So you don't have to randomly change like who gets what damage from the meteor. Everybody standing in the meteor gets hit by the meteor. They can tweak the size of the reticle, and then the bulkiness of the players will determine how many people are in that ground reticle total. I also think that everybody wants freedom of movement. Not going to talk about the split body animation or the root animation. They've already seemed to solve that problem. But I'm talking about stuff like teleports or blinks, not being 15 meters in a set direction, because there's a certain level of predictability. Oh, I'm fighting a mage and I know he's going to go 15 meters in that direction if he blinks out. I think there should be a freedom to set your distance between 8 and 15. In the ability menu, it should be my blinks are going to be 9 meters. I also think that you should be able to set them in a direction or be random. So when I blink out, I don't go 15 feet or 9 meters ahead of me. I go 9 meters away from where I was center. I think that you should be able to set it. I want to go in a certain direction or be random. That adds a certain variability to combat. I also think that what action players want, action players, they can't decide on what they want. And this is really the problem. Intrepid Studios is constantly kicking field goals at moving goalposts. Remember when we had APOC, the action players didn't show up. They came in, they said, this is a bad BR, I'm going to leave. Some people said, if combat's too floaty, so we ended up in fixed root forward animation. Then we get to Alpha 1, and fixed root forward animation didn't feel good, so now we have split body. I don't think the action players know what they want, so I don't think Intrepid could be expected to deliver for them. Some say they want BDO style or nothing. Some say Guild Wars 2 action camera would be okay. Action camera, not really action combat, remember that. So what you have here is you have the tab players are really not looking for anything lower than about a 7.9. They're not willing to move. The problem is Intrepid doesn't know what to deliver because the action players are in 3 different camps and they're all willing to accept different things. Some action players are saying I'd be okay with tab enhanced. Some action players are saying if it's not BDO, I'm not playing. The question is that do you really want Intrepid to continue to have to maintain this 400% workload? Do you want them to have to figure out how they're going to handle action attacker versus tab defender, action attacker versus action defender, tab attacker versus tab defender, and tab attacker versus action defender? Because really, if you want a pure hybrid, you're going to have rule sets for all of these. Truth of the matter is, this is where I want you to leave a comment. This is where I want you to tell me what you want. So as I continue to roll up things to Intrepid, I could say, based on this video, this is what the people want. And with that said, guys, that is it for today. No fancy outro. Leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel, and do me a favor. I need a really big favor. I'm going to put a link to my PGN Music channel here. I need to get to 1,000 subscribers so I can get the PGN Music channel monetized. do me a big favor for the end of the year. Hit that channel up, subscribe to it, so I can keep making more DMCA free music for all the other content creators. You guys take care. I'll see you next time.
I say, Sprocket, we've reached the end of another video. Time to thank the sponsors. Yes, that will do, that will do. Shall we pop off for a spot of tea?